Welcome to Crimepedia Podcast. I'm your host this week. My name is Cherry. And with me, as always, is my co-host. I was going to say sidekick then, but my co-host is Morgan.
Hello, Cherry. Hello.
I hope everyone's having a good week this week. We're rapidly approaching the end of January. So the saddest month of the year is nearly over and everyone's going to start getting happy again. It feels like it's like January the 499th at the moment, doesn't it? It feels like it's been January forever.
I know. And you know what? It has been a really, really long January for me because I went most of the month with no voice. And I think I have my voice is about 99% back now. So yeah. I'm almost fully back.
Almost back to normal. Batteries charged and back to normal. It's been a bit mad. So we're going off into February, and then before we know it again, we'll be going, oh yeah, we're rapidly approaching Christmas.
I know.
So this year will be 3 years in podcasting for us, which will be an exciting milestone to reach. So it'll be our third birthday this year, which is really nice. We've got some really good events that we're going to keep you updated with that are coming up throughout this year. Places that you can come and see us. We're trying to get to all the events that we can, but obviously with us being one in England and one in America, it's quite difficult to get to the same places at the same time. So chances are at the events that you go to for true crime this year, you might see one of us, hopefully both, but you might see one of us at a time.
Why don't we find a island, like a nice Caribbean island that we can buy, and we'll just make it Crimepedia Island, and we can just live there?
Well, that would be great, and then we could host like true crime festivals and stuff like that on our island, and people could just come and visit.
Amazing.
That would be cool. That would be great. Can you imagine?
That'd be amazing. If you enjoy us and you want to get more of us, you can always sign up for a Patreon by going to patreon.com/Crimepedia, and you can join for as little as $2 a month. Cherry brought us a very interesting case or story today about a wrongfully convicted man in the UK. Very interesting. Normally we talk rubbish and we talk just whatever's on our mind. Sometimes we do talk some true crime, and we have interesting stories that are out there. And we also have our Crimepedia, what do we call it? Case closed, where we talk, give each other cases that are closed. Since we do mostly unsolved cases on the main show, we do some cases that have been solved over on Crimepedia Extra, so you can listen to that on Patreon.
Well, it's quite interesting because sometimes there are cases here that have been solved that were huge in our news that you guys not necessarily would know about, and the same the other way around. So it's always quite nice sometimes to have an ending and to be able to give you a conclusion to a story that's been big over here. So yeah, it's quite cool. So if you want to join our Patreon, we would love to have you. Just same price as a cup of coffee at the moment. So if you want to do it, we truly appreciate all of our Patreon supporting our show. Okay, so how about I give you this week's case?
Let's do it.
It was the 29th of July 1981 and England was ready to watch the wedding of the century. Lady Diana Spencer was to marry Prince Charles. London was abuzz with people lining the streets to see the new princess in her beautiful dress. 750 million people in 74 countries around the world were watching. But for one family, the 29th of July 1981 would certainly be a day they'd never forget, but for all the wrong reasons. This is Crimepedia, and this is the disappearance of Vishal Mehrotra. Okay, Morgan, so Vishal Mehrotra was a bright, independent 8-year-old boy, and he was described as fun, honest. He was born in India to parents Vishambar and Aruna on the 27th of September 1972. His family and him emigrated to the UK in 1978. His father was a solicitor, and at the time of his disappearance, his mum and dad had actually separated, and mum had gone back to India to manage a jewellery business that they had. Now, Vishal and his father lived on Holmbush Road in Putney in South London. He lived with his younger sister Mamta and also the live-in nanny Juanita Carvalho. There's a lot of names in this week that I have really had to concentrate to pronounce. So if I get any of these wrong, I do apologise. 100% my fault, but they are a bit of a mouthful as we go. So please forgive me. On the 29th of July 1981, now I told you about this in the intro. It was the wedding day of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer. The whole of London was full of visitors that wanted to catch a glimpse of the procession. They wanted to see the chance to see Lady Diana in her dress. The Mehrotra family were no different. They were the same. The night before, Vishal had a friend called Ben over to stay at his house. The family waved Ben off and then took the train to London to watch the wedding from the window of Vishambar's workplace, which is quite cool. I mean, that's the kind of thing when my dad used to work in London. That's the kind of thing we used to do. We'd go up to London.
Yeah.
My dad used to be the foreman of a underground train station, and we used to go up and get on like one of Dad's trains. So I can see how this would have been a family thing to go and do. Now, when they took the train back to East Putney after the procession, after they'd seen everything, and where they arrived back at the East Putney train station at around 20 to 2 in the afternoon. Vishambar was quite tired. He went directly home. He gave both the children £20 each to go and buy sweets, and then he left them with their nanny, Juanita. So Juanita took the children to a local newsagent, so a little corner store. They were in the shop for about 20 minutes or so. Children were buying sweets, but they'd been complaining that they had sore throats. So she decided to go and buy them some cough medicine from Putney High Street. Vishal said that he was tired. He didn't want to go all the way to Putney High Street to go and get cough medicine. He wanted to walk home by himself. Now, he walked home from school and to school every day on his own. So Juanita said, okay, yes, you can go home. Let me take you across the road and I will keep Mamta with me because she was too small to let the two children walk home by themselves. So she took him across the main road, over the pedestrian crossing, and then left him to walk the rest of the way by himself while she and Mamta went to go and get the cough medicine. So the two girls arrived back at home at around 3 p.m, okay? And Vishambar was still asleep in bed, but there was no sign of Vishal. So Juanita thought maybe he'd gone out to play with his friends, so her and Mamta then took a nap as well. When Juanita woke up at around 4:30, she found that Vishal still hadn't returned. She was now worried, obviously, went and spoke to his father and explained that she hadn't actually seen him since she let him walk home. So Vishambar and Juanita went round to the neighbours' houses to see if they could find out if any had seen him, anyone had seen him walking around, if he was playing with any of the kids. When it got to like 7 p.m, Vishal still wasn't home. There was no sightings of him. No one had seen him. They then reported him missing to the Metropolitan Police. So when the police started their inquiries, they started with the door-to-door inquiries like you do. No one had seen any sign of Vishal. There was no evidence to where he could have gone. The police searched the vicinity of where they lived from the air with a thermal camera. They did ground searches of the common land around that area, the River Thames. Still, no sign of him. Now, initially, it was thought that he could have tried to travel back to India to his mum. You know what kids like? I mean, he's a young boy. They do have these, crazy notions sometimes, don't they? But his family sort of said no.
Okay, so how does an 8-year-old boy? It's not like traveling across the country to get to mom.
No.
Or across the county, whatever. This is across a continent.
Yeah.
Halfway around the world.
Yeah. And unfortunately, this wasn't the case. But they did actually investigate this. Interpol did actually investigate to see whether anyone had taken him, to India with them. So could it have been a family member that was a bit begruntled that maybe they didn't want him living at home with dad or something? Because family issues can be crazy, can't they? So they did actually investigate that. So that was one line of investigation that was then closed down. There was also an additional investigation to the possibility that he had been abducted by a racist gang. But again, this also came to nothing. Now, remember Vishal's friend Ben that I talked about that had stayed over the night before they had gone to see the procession, of the wedding procession. Now, in a Channel 4 documentary recently, the Professor David Wilson and Amelia, I can't remember her name, Amelia something. She acts as a pathologist in a TV show here called Silent Witness. And her and Professor David Wilson actually look into real life cases together. And in this documentary, Ben speaks to David Wilson about the school that Vishal and him had attended. Now, the school was called St. James's Prep School in South Kensington. And he described this school as an awful school where he suffered physical and sexual abuse. Now, it's not known,
Okay.
I must say, it's not known 100% whether Vishal also suffered the same fate as Ben, but I did find a really interesting article on the BBC News website that said an inquiry found out that pupils at St James's in South Kensington and St Vedas in Hampstead had been subjected to criminal levels of violence over 2 decades from the 70s. So all of these former students had come forward and told the BBC that during the time of living at this school, this prep school, the students were severely beaten. They were treated really badly, and the school actually had apologized unreservedly to those who suffered from these things that happened, and a huge this huge inquiry was launched. The BBC was told that 45 former students who attended the schools between 1975 and 1992 have so far received payments of up to £30,000 each. But all of the cases were settled out of court. They were also settled without an admission of liability. But do you pay somebody if you didn't do something?
No.
So that makes me think, well, okay, I know that the cases have been settled without an admission of liability, but these people each received up to £30,000 each for something that possibly didn't happen. It doesn't make sense there, you know?
It doesn't. No.
So that's the kind of school that the boys attended. And I thought that was quite interesting that I could actually find different articles. And there are quite a few. If you want to look this up yourself, there are quite a few articles about this school. And honestly, this was like surfing down a rabbit hole. This was the amount of schools from back in those days where this kind of behavior happened across the whole of the country is actually, it's crazy. I honestly didn't know that this kind of thing happened as much as it did. There's so many different inquiries into schools, so many different people that have come forward with this kind of stuff. Now, on the 25th of February, 1982, this is 7 months after Vishal disappeared, there were 2 men shooting pigeons, and they discovered a skull, some rib bones, and a section of vertebrae at a place called Alder Copse. Now, this is in Durley Marsh Farm in Rowgate, which is near Petersfield. Now, the bones appeared to have been taken apart by wildlife, so they weren't in an intact skeleton. They had been scattered about by the wildlife and were found kind of partially buried in a bog. Not buried by spade buried, but kind of by time, you know, and that kind of thing. The area was a vast wasteland, and the remains were kind of covered in twigs and brush from around that area. There was an excavation done, obviously, and this search involved about 30 police officers. When they started to look in that area, they actually uncovered more bones. So the bones were taken to London for a forensic investigation, and a detective sergeant that worked on the case, a guy called Jim Goldie, said that at the time they actually had a crime scene, but no forensics. There was no blood. The other parts of his body, the body like legs, pelvis, lower spine, weren't found. There were no clothes found with this body. So the body was found completely unclothed. When they look at what Vishal was wearing at the time, he had been wearing Superman underpants. He had been wearing a little sleeveless vest, and none of that was found. So straight away, they weren't sure straight away that it was Vishal. But unfortunately, after testing, they found out that this actually were the remains of Vishal, which is horrible. I don't, you know me. I don't like children's cases, but this case was one of those ones. When I saw his little face, the picture of him, he's adorable. When I saw his face, and then I read about it, and I got really angry, and you'll see why when I get to it. I got really, really angry about it, and I thought, did you know what? This case, I want to talk about this case because I want this boy. There's things that need to be done about this case. I'll get to that in a minute before I get.
Okay, so you said he was found on a farm.
Yeah, it's kind of a farm. It's called Marsh Farm, but it's not a farm, if you know what I mean. It's like kind of like wasteland where not very far away they have like the Goodwood like Festival of Speed and stuff like that is done. So it's quite an open area, somewhere where people don't just sort of wander through, you know.
Where's it located?
So it's
near London.
Well, no, it's Petersfield. It's not. I'm trying to think how far out of London it is. It's a fair way out. It's not close to London, but it is. I mean, it was within driving distance, obviously.
Okay, on his way to Portsmouth. It looks.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
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 So the
So really,
inquest.
nothing's out in this area.
No,
There's really nothing out there.
no reason really. No reason really to be going out
Okay.
there.
Okay.
Not that, you wouldn't just drive through there just for fun. At the inquest into Vishal's death, the coroner, a guy called Mark Calvert-Lee, recorded an open verdict because he couldn't be for sure that, of Vishal's cause of death. So he recorded
Yeah.
an open verdict, understandably, but he said that foul play was likely.
I understand that how the coroner's inquest works, but how does that affect? Does that have any sort of effect on investigation when it's an open verdict, or they aren't able to determine the cause of death? Or does that cause any sort of issues moving forward?
No, it doesn't. Basically, the file for the coroner is prepared by the police usually, and the police will give the coroner this report of what they believe has happened, the circumstances around this person's death, and it's then the coroner's job. The coroner's job is to literally give you who died, why they died, where they died, when they died, and the cause of death. So not actually why that person has died. It would be the cause of death. Okay. So a coroner can't usually tell you why someone's died. They would tell you that the cause of death was this, and then, it's open to interpretation after that, really. So with this, it's open. The police are still able to then, go and carry about their...
They're still able to investigate it as a murder.
Yes, because it's an open verdict. So yes.
Okay.
So the only witness I found this witness very, very interesting. So unfortunately now this lady's passed away, but her granddaughter speaks on this Channel 4 documentary, and she said that her grandmother said that she was on a train. She thinks the District line, had been to see her daughter in hospital, was on the District line on the way home, and she saw a boy that matched Vishal's description on the day that he disappeared. She said that the boy was sitting on his own on this train, and she sort of noticed him because it was weird, because he was by himself. He seemed to be by himself. She described him as an Asian boy. She says that there was a man sitting near the boy who was watching him, very interested in him, but they didn't seem to be traveling together. She described this guy. Do you know who Catweasel is?
No.
Okay.
Catweasel?
Yeah. So if you just Google Catweasel whilst I explain this, you will see a picture of a man. Catweasel is how this woman described this man. Okay. The next day the next day in the newspaper, I'll give you all the chance to Google it whilst I'm talking. The next day in the newspaper, she saw the story about Vishal going missing. She told her daughter, that is the boy that I saw on the train. So she called the police, and they said, okay, we'll send someone to come and speak to you. But nobody ever came to speak to her. Okay. A while later, now we're not sure if this was weeks or months later, she was reading a newspaper and came across an article about a paedophile gang called the Dirty Dozen. You might know about these if you're in England. You might know about these people. Horrific people. She recognised one of the men in the photo, a guy called Leslie Bailey. Now, if you Google Leslie Bailey, he was the man that she saw watching Vishal, the one that she described as Catweasel, and his nickname is Catweasel amongst his friends.
No.
Okay. You can see the similarities. He does look like Catweasel. Now, the Dirty Dozen, I'm going to give you a trigger warning here, because the next few things that I'm going to talk about are disgusting and horrific, but I need to talk about them because unfortunately this is going to be part of this investigation, and you'll see why. So if this kind of stuff you're very sensitive to, perhaps you might want to miss the rest of this episode, because unfortunately there's no way around it. Okay, so that's your warning. Now, the Dirty Dozen is a group of men led by a guy called Sidney Cook. Now, Sidney Cook, this gang was in the 1970s. Cook and a group of approximately 12 other paedophiles began hiring rent boys and abducting young male children off the streets. Okay, the victims were drugged, they were abused, they were raped in group orgies. Just horrific. Now, by the mid-1980s, this group had actually got its own flat on the Kingsmead housing estate in Hackney in London. Okay, that's East London. And Sidney Cook was the leader of this gang. He was nicknamed Hissing Sid. I don't even want to know why, by his disgusting paedophile friends. And he has been described as Britain's most notorious paedophile. Okay. A few months after Vishal's disappearance, Vishal, his father, was contacted by an unidentified man. This man is thought to have been in his early 20s. The man suggested that Vishal's abduction had been connected to a group of influential paedophiles associated with a guest house called the Elm Guest House. Okay. The man stated that he had told the Metropolitan Police about this guest house, about Vishal, that he thinks that Vishal was actually involved in this, but Metropolitan Police had not followed up his report. Vishal gave the recording of the telephone conversation to detectives, but the detectives dismissed it as a prank call and it wasn't followed up again. The location of Vishal's disappearance was less than a mile from this Elm guest house. So the guest house itself, okay, was part of this huge controversy and conspiracy regarding paedophile activity within high-profile people, okay? One of the owners, a woman called Carol Cassia, she died mysteriously in 1990, and actually it was claimed that she was murdered because she had information regarding the paedophiles and that used this Elm guest house for these parties. These included high court judges, allegedly, politicians, allegedly, people that were of very high standing, allegedly. And Carol Cassia and her husband were convicted of running a disorderly house. Okay, they were fined £1,000 each and given suspended sentences.
That's it?
What were we
That's it.
thinking? That's all they were given, £1,000 fine and suspended sentences for holding parties that facilitated grown men to abuse and rape young boys. £1,000 fine and a suspended sentence.
That's it.
That's disgusting, isn't it?
That's not even a slap on the wrist.
No. I know drug dealers that have got more than that.
Yeah.
Just horrific. But then doesn't it make you think, well, if they've got information on judges, politicians, possibly high court people that are in good standing, upstanding members of the community, is that why that they got off with such a light sentence? Could that be why that they didn't get put in prison and had the shit kicked out of them in prison?
It's unbelievable.
Literally, like my fists. I'm just so angry. I don't know why I cover these things, but I'm thinking of Vishal and I'm thinking of his family getting some kind of justice or some kind of answer from this. So apparently this Carol Cassia and her husband there's been information since, let's say, okay, that Carol had claimed that child protection officers, remember this, child protection officers had supplied children from Grafton Close Children's Home, which was run by the council, for child sex parties at the guest house, and had a list of names of adults that had attended these parties, okay? And then you wonder why she mysteriously died. It was also claimed that Martin Allen, who was a 15-year-old who vanished on 5th of November 1979, it's also thought that he might have ended up at this guest house. His family said that there's been a massive cover-up over his disappearance, and they were told that his case files were lost in a freak flood.
Of course.
You just knew I was going to say that, didn't you? You knew I was going to say that.
Yeah. This is disgusting.
Yeah.
And it's disgusting that this happens. It continues to happen. What is wrong with us?
I don't know.
What is wrong with us?
If somebody...
As humans, what is wrong with us?
If somebody does something like this, and somebody facilitates other people to do these disgusting things to innocent children, they should all be treated the same. She is just as bad as the people that were abusing those children. She is just as at fault as those people. Why should she be let off because she didn't physically touch them or physically abuse them? She facilitated that abuse.
Yeah, that's just like Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah.
That is what it is.
Another enabler.
It's unbelievable.
It is. Now, Martin Allen's brother allegedly said that he was told by the police if he looked too deep into the case, he might get himself hurt. And so the family were warned against looking into the disappearance of Martin Allen, which made me want to look into it even more. So that's also on my
course,
list
yeah.
of things. Now, soon after Vishal Mehrotra disappeared, his father received a letter from a man that said he might know the identity of a man that he thought had taken Vishal to this Durford Abbey farm from Putney. The police actually traced the writer of the letter, but no further developments were made that I could find. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in 2005 and 2015, Sussex Police carried out reviews on Vishal's case. On the Channel 4 documentary, they talk about these reviews, mentioning diaries in both reviews, saying that they've discovered that Sidney Cook, the leader of this paedophile ring, was placed in Goodwood, West Sussex, on the 29th of July 1981, the day that Vishal went missing. They say that they know that Sidney Cook knew this area because he had an encyclopedic knowledge about fairs and fairgrounds. Now, he and his paedophile gangmates were mostly fairground workers, right? This is what they did. They travelled around to different fairgrounds. They worked on fairgrounds and they groomed children who visited the fairgrounds. So they knew that there was a campsite that fairground workers would use, and there's every chance that Sidney was aware of Older Copse, which is where Vishal's remains were found. Another very interesting aspect of this is that there was a fair on at the time of Vishal's disappearance in the area. And if Sidney Cook was to travel to Goodwood, where this fair was on, from Hackney, where he was, he would have travelled 1, past Putney, which is where Vishal was last seen, and 2, past the site where Vishal's body was found. So not only have we got a notorious paedophile with a penchant for young boys placed in the area at the time that Vishal went missing, he also would have had to have driven past where Vishal was to the place and past the deposition site of where Vishal's body was found. And he had great knowledge of the area in which, close to where Vishal's body was found.
A very secluded area.
Very secluded area.
Right.
Yeah.
Where, in all honesty, there's really, unless you live in the area or
there's
you
not
drive,
a lot.
There's no reason for you to be going past that area.
No, that's right.
Yeah, you could just take a random left or right turn and come across it, right?
That's right.
It's possible. But when you have someone like this,
yeah, there's a reason that he was there.
Yes.
The good news is Sidney Cook is still alive. He is 95 years old. He's still in prison. He and the members of his gang were jailed for the manslaughter of 14-year-old Jason Swift, okay? He's since received 2 life sentences for a series of sex offences, which occurred between 1972 and 1981, and he's still in jail because he's been refused parole on more than 10 occasions, I believe. He and his fellow paedophiles, there was Leslie Bailey, Robert Oliver, and Stephen Barrell. They drugged and raped Jason in a flat on the Kingsmead housing estate in Hackney in 1985 before dumping his body in a copse in Essex. Now, the area that Vishal was found could be described as a copse. So this is two similar deaths, okay? Now, Leslie Bailey, who was known as Catweasel that I told you about, was later convicted of the manslaughter of Mark Tildesley. Now, he was 7 years old, okay? He raped Mark Tildesley in a caravan in 1984 whilst visiting a fairground near Wokingham in Berkshire, okay? Leslie Bailey was also convicted of the murder of Barry Lewis, who was 6 years old, who was abducted in 1991, sexually abused by up to 8 men, and then buried in a shallow grave near Waltham Abbey in Essex. So again, another shallow grave, another area of like wasteland and, you know, out in the middle of nowhere. Thankfully, Leslie Bailey, known as Catweasel, was murdered in his prison cell in 1993. So thankfully, he didn't have a good ending in life, and I don't apologise for that. Vishal's father, I feel for Vishal's father, Vishambar, because there's a lot in this case. I mean, there's a lot more to this case, but I would be here all day trying to tell you. I've tried to pick out the most important elements of this case to bring to you. Vishal's father is a retired magistrate, okay? He's a very intelligent man. He has good knowledge of the criminal justice system. He quite rightly feels that there's a lot of police failure in this crime. Okay. He says that there is institutional racism because he believes that there were a lot of things that were given to the police that they didn't follow up on. And when you read back, there is quite a few things that people have that they've been put forward to the police that they've just dismissed it. Like the phone call, it's just a prank call. The other guy that said, I think this boy has been taken by this guy, and it was dismissed again. He says there was an interview that he did in 2021 with the BBC, and he said, I've got no doubt that there's racism. Otherwise, why would they always try to brush this under the carpet? When it comes to white children, they'll fly to Portugal, they'll fly to Germany, they'll fly everywhere. And years have gone by, and they're still investigating and they're still looking, and money doesn't seem to be a problem. But for my son, I can't see that they've done anything constructive by way of investigation at all. He said that he had been given information that Vishal had been abducted by a paedophile ring associated with the Elm House guest house and had been taken there. However, he said that the police had ignored this information and that he believes there had been a huge cover-up over the case because of the guests that were at the Elm guest house. You can't blame the guy for thinking that, because the people that were frequenting that guest house were all allegedly people of high standing in the community.
In power.
Yes. And so you can't blame him for wondering why this information that Vishal has been taken by this paedophile ring to this guest house and given over to these parties, to these awful people. You can't blame him for not having any information from them and for feeling like that. Now, a spokesman for the police force, because I want to obviously give you what they said, and this is verbatim from their report, said, we firmly refute any suggestion that our inquiries over the past 40 years have been hampered or influenced in any way by institutional racism. Reports of the 1982 investigation make it very clear the thorough and considered nature of detailed and painstaking work that officers and staff have carried out. I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that those officers and those police officers on the ground, I don't doubt that they did everything they could to try and sort this out. Unfortunately, when you have things like paedophile rings, where you have people that are connected in high places, the people on the ground aren't always allowed to do the job that they're allowed to do, that they're supposed to be doing, because of constraints from higher up. So I have no doubt that all those policemen and women that worked on that case worked damn hard on that case to get justice for that little boy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So
I agree.
A bit more on this for you. In 2020, it was reported that police had interviewed 3 men that had been convicted and given prison sentences for child abuse at a school in the southeast. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They were interviewed about Vishal's disappearance. One of the men had written a confidential report in 1983 that he titled Vishal. I'm sorry if I'm talking too fast. I'm just so cross.
Oh,
I'm
you're
trying
fine.
not to talk too fast, because when I get angry, I talk really quick. So he wrote this report in 1983. Okay. It was a confidential report.
Okay.
I'm not sure why it was confidential, but it was titled Vishal. Okay. It was about caring for Asian children in the UK. He said that this report had nothing to do with Vishal, and he regretted naming the report after him. And police said that they had no plans to make any further inquiries into this report. I thought that was really weird, because Vishal is quite it's a different name, isn't it? So why would you call that report Vishal?
That is very strange. I mean, you can't convict anyone on that.
No, of course not. But it's still odd, isn't it?
It is very odd. Yeah.
Well, it was reported that 2 of those 3 men, that were questioned in 2019, told the police that there had been a paedophile sex ring operating at the time that the man had written this report. Okay. Now, the BBC interviewed them and told them that the report had focused on a teenage child that this man had visited in Southall that he had been attracted to. Okay. The man also admitted to being part of a paedophile sex ring in the 80s, and that he had sexually abused 2 Asian boys whilst working at a school for disadvantaged children. Now, remember, the Elm Guest House, she said that people working with the school children were providing kids from that school to the guest house.
Mm-mm.
So, according to the website Unsolved Murders, on October 2020, more information was reported stating that one of the
Okay.
3 men questioned in 2019, who was actually known to Vishal Mehrotra, had been acquitted of sexually abusing young boys in 2014. So, he'd actually been arrested for abusing young boys, but was acquitted, was said to have
Yeah.
driven a car similar to one that was seen near Durford Abbey Farm, where Vishal was later found. Other information came forward stating that an abuse victim had given details to police about a person employed by the social services at the time who had an obsession with tying boys up, adding that the man had taken him and other boys from London to other care homes across the southeast.
It's fucking disgusting. So disgusting.
But how convoluted is this? How many people are there involved in this disgusting ring of, it's not just the paedophiles themselves, it's the people that are taking these kids, vulnerable children, and giving
the people
them to these people.
that are supposed to be
looking after
care.
them.
They're supposed to be giving them care.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think like all these rings are so intertwined.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
They it's disgusting.
But this whole report about, naming this report Vishal, and then later finding out that this guy actually was quite attracted to young boys, and I mean it's just messed up, and I that can't be a coincidence. I don't know about that. It just can't be a coincidence to me. I couldn't find any more on that. I looked everywhere that I could find anything, and that's all that I could find about it. But unfortunately, to this day, Vishal's murder is still unsolved. Time is running out because Sidney Cook is now 95. He's in prison. Is he going to tell the truth? Or is he going to have that disgusting air of keeping the last bit of control right to the very end?
Mm-hmm.
And is he going to and is he going to do that?
I think it's all about control. It's all about control.
Of course it is.
This is a scary thing. So I just looked up this Dirty Dozen group, right?
Yeah. It's horrible reading. It's awful.
It is. So they were at least convicted on at least three.
Yeah, that's right.
Rapes and murders.
Yeah.
The first one happening in 1984.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which means in Vishal was 81?
82. It was 81 that
they found
81
it
that they it was just
so that
after.
means that if they're connected to this, there is at least a 3-year period of not knowing what they've done. How many other kids that have disappeared in this time period are related to them?
Yeah.
And they even went back into the 70s, right?
Yeah.
So right now, Sidney was convicted on 3.
He was, and he's since received 2 life sentences for sex offences that were that occurred between 72 and 81. So we can go back for Sidney as far as 72. 1972, he's got offences that he's now he's been convicted of.
Yeah. So I just happened to come across this. So I was looking up different stuff as you were going over the case, and I just found this Operation Hydrant that this came out after the Jimmy Savile news came out, right?
Yeah.
Where they started looking into allegations of child abuse starting back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Okay. So this operation found 11,346 allegations of child abuse that were reported to this operation, of which just over 4,000 resulted in conviction. Okay.
Mm.
Looking at this, there were just under 1,600 suspects investigated for child abuse that occurred just in the 70s.
Mm.
There were probably about 1,200 in the 80s, and then it drops off from there.
Mm.
So looking at this, a vast majority of the people that were in this operation were from the 70s and 80s. And
it's just horrible, isn't it?
So disgusting. 7,000 suspects were identified in this.
7,000 people. I just can't get my head. I mean, the thing is, I think the way that technology now is progressing, we have these, you can watch them on TikTok. You see these guys that go around these groups of people that go around that are tracking these predators, that are messaging like 10-year-old girls and 10-year-old boys, and they're fully grown adults, and they're grooming these kids. And talking to a really good friend of ours the other day, and she's been looking into how they get away with this. There is no excuse. Okay, this one man that we were looking at, he has 5 different profiles on 5 different paedophile sites where they groom these children. And then he tried to argue it that he was not mentally sound. I'm sorry, but if you can make up 5 different profiles over 5 different websites, okay, you can use your computer so that it can't be traced and it can't be tracked. You're not telling me that you are mentally unstable. That's absolute bollocks, because you are clever enough to go and disguise yourself. You know what you're doing is wrong, because otherwise you wouldn't be going to so many lengths to try and disguise who you are. You're then trying to meet these children. They're children. They're not even anywhere near puberty. They're children. You can't tell me that you're not it's because I've got a mental illness. That's crap. That's absolute crap. That's your excuse for you trying to excuse the disgusting behavior that you are showing.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, it makes me so mad. It just makes me feel so sick that we even have these cases to talk about.
Yeah. Oh, God. A vast majority of the cases from Operation Hydrant were related to educational institutions. Vast majority.
Do you know, and a really close friend of my family's, he's written a book, and he gave me his book to read, and he said, let me know. He said, I'm telling you now, it's hard, but let me know when you've read it. I read his book and I cried and cried and cried. He is a guy living in London who went to a school near where I live now in the Southwest, and he was subjected to some of the most horrific abuse that I've ever read about. And his book is an honest and open account of what happened to him on a daily basis at a school that his parents thought he was really happy in. And that was in the 70s. And I've seen how that affected that guy. Even now, he still has to do things to keep his mental health well. And that is still happening. It's still happening to kids that are supposed to be being looked after, that are vulnerable, to children that need adults that can care for them, that are supposed to be caring for them. And it's still happening now. It's 2023 and it's still happening. What the hell? Why? It's horrific. It's just horrendous. Horrific. It is. It's horrendous. It is horrendous. So I know that this isn't a nice case to listen to. I know they're not nice, but particularly this is a particularly awful case to listen to. But for me, I saw the picture of Vishal and I saw his cute little beaming face, and I thought about him walking home from a shop to where he should have been okay. He should be able to walk along the road without having some dirty, awful man picking him up and taking him and doing horrific things to him. And I saw his little picture and I thought, do you know what? There are so many Vishals out there. There are so many children that this is happening to or has happened to. And take more notice, make the police, make them listen. She rang and she said, I saw him on the train. This guy was looking at him. This is the guy. This is that boy. Nothing was done. Nothing was followed up. We need to do better. We need to do better as humans. We need to do better as people. We need to stop this from happening. I know we're never going to stop it 100%, but we need to try harder.
We do. These kids need protected.
Yeah. They do.
It's disgusting.
It is. It is disgusting.
It is disgusting.
It is, and it's something that will affect them for the rest of their lives. It's something that is going to... It's always going to be there, and it's cruel, and it shouldn't be happening. There is no rational explanation as to why these children should have been put through this. There isn't. There's no excuse. And I mean, if you're a long-time listener of this show, you know exactly what I think about paedophiles, and you know exactly what I would do was I in charge of that sort of thing. And yeah, I just wanted to speak about Vishal and the gorgeous, cute little boy that he was and the happy little boy that he was. And I want to get this case out there. Hopefully the police will look into Sidney Cook some more now. Hopefully they'll speak to him more, and hopefully we'll find out if that is how, because Vishal's dad and his sister, they deserve to know how what happened to his son. How did he get to be there? As a parent, that's horrendous. Not ever knowing, it's awful, and they deserve better.
You said covering these cases like this, it's hard. These are hard cases.
It's really
to cover.
hard.
But it needs to be done, because if we don't do the hard things, if other podcasts don't do the hard things, and we don't talk about these cases, then
that's right. They get swept under the carpet.
Kids like Vishal get forgotten, and we don't want to forget.
No,
we don't want to forget them, and you want to make sure that there's some sort of justice or closure.
Yeah, justice
to these cases.
100%. Yeah, 100% justice. So that is this week's case. That is the story of little Vishal, and I will keep you updated. I will keep looking into this, and I'll hopefully be able to bring you better news that we might have found out what happened to him. And hopefully Sidney Cook has an ounce of decency in his withered and disgusting old man body and speaks to police. I'm not holding my breath on that, but
is he the only one left from the ring that's alive?
No, there was like 12 of them, but they are all in that sort of age. I know that Leslie Catweasel, I know that he's dead, and there's another one of them that was dead that I could find, but I'm sure that the others. I'm sure that there's plenty more Sidney Cooks out there, and I'm sure that there's plenty more disgusting, horrible paedophiles that are out there. And I really hope that one by one they get picked off.
Yeah, because I was sitting here thinking, okay, maybe someone else who's involved in this ring knows it, has information, and maybe they'll talk. But that doesn't mean that these guys didn't do other things outside of their little ring, right?
That's right. Yeah, of course.
So it could be a situation where one of them it could have been this Catweasel guy, which fucking. No, I mean that's frightening.
It is frightening.
If he could have done something on his own and had no one else be involved with it, and if that's the case, that's a shame, because then we know that with him being dead, we may never know.
Yeah, that's right. But that is this week's case for you.
Well, thank you. I don't know if that's the right word.
I don't know. I was going to say I don't think it is, but I'm trying to think of it in a better light of trying to bring more awareness to people like Vishal and his family. And so let's move on to a dumb criminal. I think I need it after that one.
Yeah, I think so. So let's try our best to end this on a different note. So let's do a little dumb criminal.
Hey, Captain Stupid Poopy Pants, use a dummy.
All right, Cherry. Once again, this one is truly a dummy. So I know we do a lot of bank robberies that go wrong for the criminal. I decided to go do something a little different, and we are doing a car theft, all right? So a suspected car thief was arrested after San Diego police said he had parked his car. Not his car.
His thefted car. Thefted car? His stolen car. You can leave that in. His thefted car.
Thefted car. After San Diego police said that he parked the stolen car and fell asleep at, of all places, San Diego Police Department's traffic division parking lot.
Are you joking? He took a stolen car to the police station car park.
Yes. So at around 3 a.m. on the day in question, a San Diego Police Department sergeant saw a white sedan parked in a handicap spot in front of the traffic division station. Inside, he found a man passed out behind the wheel.
Yeah, he's got to.
And in checking the license plate, was able to determine that the car was reported stolen.
Oh, no way.
Now, after waking the man up, the officer asked him why he was parked in front of the police station. And the man told the officer that he was tired and it seemed like a safe place to rest because there were other police cars present.
Yeah, clever. Okay.
Yes. So, of course, they searched the car. They did find drugs as well as a pipe inside. So the man was quickly taken into custody.
What a silly sod. Of all the I mean, I get the logic of it. Yeah, it's a pretty safe place to go. But then surely you're going to think that the police are going to come and check the vehicle out. One, you're parked in a handicap. Two, you're asleep in your vehicle. So the police are definitely going to check on you to make sure you're okay.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So
at 3 a.m.?
Yeah, exactly. They're going to think that you've been drinking.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they're going to check you over. So the guy...
Yes.
He might as well have just handed himself in. He might as well just walked in and gone, do you know what? You better just put me in a cell because there's a stolen car outside. There's drugs in it. I might as well just come in and lie down and get warm now. You know?
Yeah, let me get a little lie down. Let me have a little lie down inside one of your cells.
Yeah, might as well.
Wow.
It's going to save a lot of time later.
Thank God for people like this that, they save us time.
They do. They really do. And thank God for Dumb Criminals for just bringing a little bit of laughter to the end of our episodes every single week. I'm just dumbfounded that we still have new material every week to keep doing this. We've been doing this for 2 years, 2.5 years nearly, and we still got material.
The hardest part of Dumb Criminal is deciding which Dumb Criminal we're going to do each week, right?
That's so true.
Because I have probably 4 that I was like, okay, which one I'm going to do of these 4? I'm going to do right now, and so I did this one. But yeah, there's so many, and they just keep coming.
They do. They just keep coming. And I'm so thankful for it. I'm so thankful because usually nobody gets hurt in these. They're usually apprehended pretty quickly by the police and they're usually dumbass, but they do brighten up. They do brighten up some harsh episodes. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for that. And thank you very much for everyone that suggested Dumb Criminals to us. If you find one and you laugh at it, then by all means, send it over to us because we'll happily use it in the show. We'll be quite happy to do that. And thank you to everyone that's sending case suggestions over to us as well. We do follow up case suggestions, and we will do if you'd like to send one over that we think we should cover. I've got a few American ones that people have asked me to look at, so I might delegate them over to you, or I might have a go myself and see. But we will be back next week. Have a wonderful week. I hope your week is a good one, and we'll see you next week. So for now, be nice.
And bye.